Today, I'm joined by Sarah DeJonge, the founder of 1,000 Hearts, a beautiful kindness project that began in Hobart and has grown into a global community of makers and givers. Through her tiny handmade felt hearts, Sarah has created a movement that reminds people of compassion, comfort, and the power of connection. One of my own values is kindness because I truly believe that when we operate from kindness, everything softens: our health, our homes, our relationships, our hearts. Sarah's work speaks so deeply to that vision. These little hearts travel from one pair of hands to another, a reminder that reconnection is always within reach. Sarah, welcome. I'm so
Thank
honoured
you.
to have you here today.
Oh, I'm honoured to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to hearing the story behind 1,000 Hearts. So, can you take us back to the very beginning? What moment in your life asked for kindness, and how did a single stitched heart become 1,000?
I think in some ways every moment of life asks for kindness if we really engage with life in that way. One thing I've learned is that everybody needs kindness pretty much all of the time. And when we relate with kindness, it does change the way we connect with people, including how we connect with ourselves. But back at the beginning, it was kind of a two-way process of I was seeing in the work that I was doing how much kindness was impacting the people that I was working with. So I was working in roles that involve counselling and supporting people through really tough times. And at that time, I was in a hospital. So I was seeing people who were sick or with a diagnosis of some kind, or perhaps had lost a loved one in the hospital. So I was dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety and grief in that role. And I was really sort of seeing how kindness was a very core part of what I could offer people. And at the same time, when I started making the initial 1,000 Hearts, my marriage had broken down. Sort of at the tail end of the marriage breakdown was when I started making hearts. And I definitely noticed the difference that it made when people could receive my experience and my story around that with kindness and compassion. And I think often even when we try to be kind, we don't quite get there. And that's what I really saw during that time. I was like, "Well, people are trying their best, but it's not really coming to me as a compassionate response." And there's all sorts of things I think that get in the way of kindness. And so, yeah, I think the kind of needing kindness to come towards me and seeing how my kindness to others was impacting them just made me think, gee, we need more of this. And
Mm.
so I went about making those hearts.
And so, when you first stitched that first little heart, what
Mhm.
was your intention right in that moment? Can you describe the feeling and what was your thought process? Like, was it just one day you're at your kitchen bench going, you know what, I'm going to start stitching some hearts?
Yeah. I made the initial hearts for a memorial service at the hospital I was working for. So we had
Mm.
wanted to give people attending that service something to take away with them. And I thought just a little tactile heart that they can slip into their pocket and keep as a reminder of that person that's died would be a really beautiful object. And I wanted it to be handmade. There were some suggestions about buying things in, and I just thought, I think
Mm.
I can make something for this. And so, because I've always been a stitcher and a crafter, and so I thought, oh, this shouldn't be too hard. And it wasn't. And so I sort of made a batch for that memorial service, which then didn't go ahead. And that's where those first hearts were then shared with people in my world. And, the intention was it was very simple, just to show some kindness and compassion and offer some comfort to people who were grieving. That was the initial
Mm.
intention because of what they were made for. Um, and the feeling that I had when I made them, I don't honestly don't remember. I don't really remember the first heart or the first batch of hearts very well because I had no idea where it was going to take me. For me, it was just another little craft project, which I was doing all the time anyway. And,
And it
I,
sounds like you were in creative flow when you were doing it. You know, when you just, it was like me with this podcast where it's, I don't know
yeah,
what I'm doing, but it feels really good and I'm going to lean into it. And I
absolutely.
think, and this has come up a lot on this particular podcast, is the word intention. And I think
Mm,
when we have an intention behind something, especially kindness, then the rest follows. And
yeah.
I guess you could compare it to, a nonna cooking a beautiful batch of Italian bolognese, or you buying it from a factory, but you know, you can
Yeah,
kind of feel the love, right? So it's the
absolutely.
intention and the love coming from these
Yeah,
little hand stitched hearts. So
yeah.
when did you first realize you're on a path to something magical and that this wasn't just a creative project?
Yeah, when I started getting those stories back from people who received the first hearts, I was really blown away by the power of that gesture, and I really felt very strongly like I need to do more of this. This is something's happening here that even though my intention was to share love and comfort, there's something much more powerful at play here than what I sort of imagined when I started. And so it was those initial stories from people who received a heart and it just made such a powerful difference for them,
Is there a
and I'm happy to
particular
share some of those
story?
stories.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I'd love to hear a couple of stories.
Yeah, so some of those early stories, and I've shared them quite a lot through the history of A Thousand Hearts because it is the beginning and where it
Mm.
came from. So one of them was a little boy, and his name is Will, and he was 6 at that time, and a neighbour one of his mum's friends contacted me and said, "Look, something's happened to Will," and she didn't go into details, but she said he's refusing to sleep in his own bed. He's afraid and he's really not going well. And his mum is at her wit's end. She's a single mum. She needs him to sleep and she needs him to sleep in his bed because he's just not coping. And I just had this feeling that there was something quite dark behind this for Will. And this friend of the mum said, "Could you make a heart in superhero colours and just send it to Will and say that, hopefully this will give him the courage of the superheroes." And so I did that and I wrote a little note and can't remember exactly what I said, but basically, the colours of the superheroes should give you courage to sleep in your bed and you'll be safe. And then I got a photo from Will's mum a few weeks later of him asleep in bed, but with his little hand curled up near his face with the heart in his hand. And just, yeah, sort of saying, look, he's been able now to transition back into his own bed and he's sleeping well. And
And
there was another.
he believed in this little heart, and that's what
Yeah,
made the
and that's
difference.
absolutely, and I think there was another one early on when there was the bombing attack at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester,
Mhm.
and one of the physios at a Manchester hospital contacted me and said, could I send some hearts to the hospital because they were treating quite a few of the young people who had been impacted and injured, and of course I did that. And this would have been a little bit after Thousand Hearts first started, but it was one of the earlier stories. And then quite a while later, I heard from the mother of one of the injured girls, and she said, um, after the attack, my daughter couldn't leave the house. She was so frightened of strangers because a stranger had perpetrated that attack. And so
Mm.
for her, a stranger then became this really scary thing that could just inflict this horrible violence. But when the little girl got the heart from another stranger, it totally kind of counteracted that image of strangers as scary and
Shifted.
dark. And she was able then to go out and about again and resume more normal life. So there were so many stories, but those kinds of stories they really landed in my heart and made me go, this is really
Mm.
powerful. Like just this very small
So
action
simple,
that's,
but so powerful. And,
yeah.
you know, Sarah, I really feel like your hearts would benefit the all of Sydney right now, given what's
Mm,
happened over the weekend and the intention behind it. So
yeah.
there's a lot of sadness and there's a lot of heaviness in Sydney at the moment. And I feel
I've
today is an
sent some.
important day. Yeah, great. Good on
Yeah.
you. Good. Yeah.
Um, yeah, some have gone up to Sydney through some contacts who'll make sure they get to people impacted. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. And is there any other special magic moment that comes to mind?
I had an email just the other day from a lady and I have no explanation for this, but she said she lives in Queensland and she was out in the garden and she said one of our hearts fell from the sky and she's sent me a photo of the heart. It was sure enough wrapped with the Thousand Hearts message. And she said it fell from the sky while I was gardening and it had exactly the message that I need to hear right now. And I had to email you and ask if you've thrown any hearts out of an aircraft lately.
Wow.
I don't know what she thinks my life looks like, but I was like, nope, it wasn't me. And so
That's
I
pretty
sort of just,
amazing that she's just stumbled across this heart. Wow,
it
that's a bit
literally fell
woo-woo.
from
I
the
like
sky.
it.
And so I just said to her, "Look, this just sort of consolidates my belief that these hearts are magic,
They
and I
land
have no explanation for
exactly.
you, but
Yeah.
just enjoy the message." Yeah.
And they land where they're meant to land. So
Yeah, they
when
do.
they're made, then a little message is wrapped with them. Is that right? By the
Yeah, so
person that stitched the heart. Oh.
they're all wrapped with a little card and then in a biodegradable cellophane bag.
And each card is different and unique?
They can be. Most of them are like a more generic message of kindness from 1,000 hearts, but people can add a lot of people add their own message. There's one you can use that has space to put your name on it as the artist who's made that heart. And some organisations have had cards created that like have their own message. So and their, logo or a message from their service or what have you, particularly in health and that sort of thing. So but I find that the Thousand Hearts message does the trick. It's very much around, this has been handmade for you to hold on to if you're feeling that you need some comfort or courage. So it's quite a universal message, I would say, that, yeah, that seems to resonate with a lot of people.
And something we all need to hear, right? It's like having a big hug or just hearing some kind words from a complete
Mhm.
stranger. It's just enough to change the course of your day, your week,
Definitely.
your year, your life for some people. So
Yeah.
by doing something that seems so minute, it can have such
Mm.
a powerful impact. And that's where
Yeah,
the magic happens.
definitely. Because it's small, but it's a symbol of something so huge
Mm,
that we all need and that we all actually need kindness and compassion for survival. We need to
mm.
feel connected, and kindness is one of the ways we get there.
So, what do you think it is about these tiny pocket sized hearts that work so powerfully as a symbol of connection and love?
I think it's you mentioned before, like the power of hand making something, like the
Hmm.
nonna as opposed to the jar off the shelf in the supermarket. And I think, the hearts are handmade, and when we make something by hand, we put a little bit of ourselves into that. And it's again goes back to what you were saying about intention, that people are making these hearts and their only intention is to share kindness. It's not a commercial thing. It's not a sort of, they're not doing it to get some kind of reward other than that reward of knowing that you've made the world a little bit better for somebody.
Mm.
And I think that's really powerful. And I think in the world that we live in at the moment, people so strongly connect with that idea of there are people out there just doing stuff to make the world better. And I've now been touched by that. And it gives people hope, I think, and makes us a little bit more optimistic about humanity when there is a lot
Does.
coming at us that's not very optimistic.
And then it creates this beautiful ripple effect, right? It's like
Oh,
if
yeah.
you've impacted one or
Mm.
two people, and I know how I came across your work. A friend of mine had been in Melbourne and went away to a ladies' health retreat for a birthday celebration. And she called me and she was just so inspired by these women and
Oh,
felt so
yeah.
connected. And one of the women had given her this little heart, and she's been through a bit of a rough ride, and it made such a
Yeah.
significant impact for her. And she's like, you
Oh,
have
beautiful.
to have Sarah on the podcast. This is amazing. Like this. And so I was so energized, and she knows that
Yeah,
kindness is one of my biggest values. So, yes,
beautiful.
I just think we need to
Yeah,
spread the word when it comes to things like this. And it does
yeah,
just make you feel so good. And then
yeah,
it's not the expectation of getting anything back other than it just feels good, right?
yeah, it does. And there's so much science behind that, when we're
Yes.
kind to each other, we giver and receiver both get a huge health bonus from that, physically, mentally. It releases chemicals that protect our cardiovascular system and
Hmm.
improve our immune response and make us happier and act like an antidepressant in the brain. It is super powerful. So
Yeah.
that alone is like, and most people don't know that that's what's happening in their body when they're engaging in acts of kindness, but that's why it feels good. It
And
actually
you know
literally
yourself,
feels good.
when you're sitting in traffic and, there's just lines and lines of it and nobody's letting you in, nobody's letting you in, and then somebody flashes
Yeah.
their lights and let you in, you're like,
Oh,
"Yes." Then you're, like, waving at them like, "Yes." And
exactly.
then you wanna do the same, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it
And then you're like,
just
well, I'll let the next person in
yeah.
because aren't we all being nice to each
And
other?
then
And
that
of course,
person's like, "Oh," and then everyone's really nice, but if we go around in a
yeah.
rage all the time, so it's like setting that intention of how can I make a difference today?
Yeah.
Not only in how I show
Absolutely.
up, but in how other people show up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it be in traffic or wherever you are, just to sort of
Mm.
that have that softness, because I think,
Mm.
kindness softens us and makes us more open-hearted, and I think that's a lovely space to be in with someone.
From one woman stitching to a global community, what do you
Mhm.
think has helped this movement spread?
I still find that quite strange that it happened like that. I think part of it, honestly, is that my intention was not to create a global kindness movement. I think, people connected with the fact that I just sort of sat, I plonked myself down on the couch one day and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make some hearts and send them out into the world." Because after the memorial service, that's when I went, "Oh, I'm gonna make 1,000 of these," because they obviously are making a difference. And I think it feels doable. I'm not some sort of, perfect influencer type out there going, I've got this PhD and I've done all this,
Mhm.
whatever work. And I'm just like a mum and someone
A
who's
humble
always worked in
mum
charities
from
and just
Tassie wanting
a bit
to
of a
do some
dork.
good in the world.
Yeah, and I think it just feels when people hear that story, like, "Oh, she just sat down and made them, and then people came." I mean, I'm still
Mm.
blown away by it, but I think it feels really doable. Sort of like, well, if I can do that, then that makes a lot of other stuff feel quite achievable. And I think it grew because of what you were saying before about the ripple effect, and that's another part of the science of kindness, is that it is contagious. Like once, exactly like your traffic example and exactly how the hearts have grown. You receive an act of kindness, you straight away want to go out and make someone else feel that boost that you've just had. And so I think that ripple effect is how it grew. And I didn't push it. I didn't have any desperation or push to make it work, which I think can sometimes get in the way. I was working in my other job. I was sort of quite happy to see that it evolved at all beyond that initial act of kindness. So for me, I was just like, look, now I've got an Etsy shop, and oh, look, now I've got a couple hundred followers on socials. I wasn't kind of right, I need to get to this goal. It
Mm.
was every bit of growth has been a joy for me, and just like the same feeling of being a bit gobsmacked. So
Mm.
yeah, it's just very organic. And I think
And something
that's,
that's obviously deeply resonated for a lot of people,
yeah.
and those beautiful, humble beginnings and the intention behind it. So, this
Mhm.
year, Sarah, you've been recognised publicly for your work. What has this meant for you and 1,000 Hearts?
It's been going out and getting some nicer dresses, that's for a start, for the events. So I have to get a dress for this. I don't really wear dresses very
Have to
much.
go fancy.
Yeah, I'm not a fancy person generally,
You
so,
could just stitch
um,
some beautiful big heart dress, a big red.
I thought about it. I did think about it. Yeah, so look, it's been amazing to have that recognition. Every step
Mm.
along the way with 1,000 Hearts, when something grows or it's recognised, I just sort of go, I never get used to it. I just feel amazed every time. And the Rural Women's Award that I won for Tassie was incredible, because that came with some funding for professional development, which led me to this course around governance for not-for-profit. And
Mhm.
that was incredible, just in helping me really clarify I was very clear on my vision and mission, but it helped me clarify like the end game. Like what's my big picture goal for 1,000 Hearts? Where am I really heading with this? And help me understand some things around how your mission can kind of shift, or they call it mission creep. Like, so if
Mm.
you're offered funding or an opportunity, that can sort of draw you away from your core mission because you sort of need the money or what have you. So,
Mm.
and it was really good, having worked in charities my whole career too. It really made sense to me to sort of learn a bit more about that kind of phenomenon that
Mm.
happens when, you start off doing something with a particular vision, and all the things that can kind of push you off track.
Different directions.
Yeah, so I don't rely on donations or grant funding for 1,000 Hearts. It's all funded by the sales and the shop and the work that I do with partnerships and things. So that gives me that more empowerment, I think, to kind of stick to my guns and stay
Good
true to
on
the
you.
vision of it, which works really well.
So, with that goal and that vision in mind, where do you hope to see 1,000 Hearts in the next 10 years?
Um, so I don't really think much beyond the next 12 months. Not one of
Okay,
these.
5. That was a big
Yeah.
jump.
10 years, I'm like, "Oh my god." The goal for me at the moment is to get the business side of it really consolidated, because that's the sustainability for me, and once that financial sustainability is in place, that allows me to do more of that investing in the community. So I want to sponsor some schools or charities to make hearts so that 1,000 Hearts is funding that, where cost is a barrier for some services to get involved. But to do that, it needs to be on really solid ground financially. So this next 12 months for me will be around really working on getting that consolidated and then making it more accessible for the community. So building up the website a bit so it's because the questions that I get asked indicate, get the frequently asked questions. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's a few things I'm not doing very well on the website because I keep getting asked the same questions.
Sounds like another course. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to sort of make it a bit easier for people to understand when they come to the website, this is how you can get involved and this is sort of how I would prefer you do it. But really, there's not a lot of restrictions around how you do it. Here are my suggestions and requests, but you do
Oh,
you at the end of the
great.
day. I'm not going to police it or try and stop it because
Mm.
that's the momentum, people doing it in a way that suits them.
And when you say in communities and clinics, like what sort of communities are involved with 1,000 Hearts?
Lots of schools, lots of hospitals and healthcare services, charities and community groups, youth councils, pretty much anywhere there are people.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible to bring the hearts in. So there's a lot of individuals out there who may be socially isolated or geographically isolated who can make hearts and either send them out into the world or share them in their local communities. But then there's some bigger groups, and this is around the world now, that there's a craft shop in the US that puts together packs of heart making supplies and they give them out for free, and then people bring the hearts back and then they distribute the hearts as well. So they're kind of doing a little mini version of what I've done through their store. A lot of schools
Mm.
bring it in for different reasons. So buddy programs. So an older student might make a heart with a younger student. I've just had a school in Northern Tassie do the 1,000 Hearts Challenge where they picked some local charities and community services to donate the hearts to and
Mm.
got pretty much the whole school community involved and linked with some aged care residents who help them make the hearts and things. So it's really around building community as much as anything and connecting people with each other.
And sounds like everyone can get involved, and particularly
Yeah,
the elderly. And I'm glad you pulled that up because they are the generation that sew and craft and do all those sort of things. So that is just so great for
absolutely.
cognitive health and sense of community
Mm,
and a sense of purpose.
yeah,
And then getting the younger communities involved with the elderly communities. I mean, it's such a
yeah.
wonderful initiative.
And you
Do
should
you
see their
have,
embroidery skills.
yeah, I bet.
Unbelievable.
It'd be a lot better than mine, I can tell you that
Yeah,
much.
and
I'm
mine.
not good with a needle and a thread. Do you have children? You mentioned before
Yeah,
you're a mum. Are your
yeah.
children involved with the 1,000 Hearts?
My daughter she's 25 now, and my
Mhm.
son Maddie, and then my son Ben is 22.
Mhm.
So Maddie wraps all the community hearts. So through the website, you can get community hearts either for free or you can cover the costs of them. So it's a really good economical option. So everybody can access the hearts and she wraps
Mm.
them. And so just to put that into context, in the last 12 months, I sent out 20,000 community hearts. That's not including other orders. That's just the community hearts. And Maddie's wrapped every single one of them. Uh,
Does she
so
sew
she's
as well? Are you both like, I mean,
yeah. So
how
she
long does
makes
it
some
take you?
hearts. I can make a heart within 3-ish minutes. Mads has made some hearts. She's on a little thing with this really cute little design that she created called a star baby. And so I've been selling some of them for her very sporadically because she's a touch and go crafter and she's busy with other things. Yeah, she's an absolute trooper with the community hearts. Benny's more my, morale booster and joy bringer and really supportive. He comes along to the events and cheers me on and he's made some
So
hearts and
wonderful.
he's shared them around, but yeah, he's not as actively involved, which is totally fine.
But they must be so proud.
Yeah, they are, which is
Mm.
yeah, really
Mm.
touching.
I love that. So, what words or intentions or energy do you silently stitch into a heart when you're stitching away at home?
Mm. Um, I think it's mostly just love, like just that universal love for humanity to kind of, if I'm making it for somebody that I know or a cause that I understand where the hearts are going to end up, I'll put something more
Personal?
specific. So I make a lot of hearts for Adora Fertility, which is they do IVF. for families and have created a model where it's really affordable, which I really appreciate because my sister had all her three sons through IVF. My three nephews are all IVF babies, and so it's
Mm.
quite close to my heart, that cause. So for them, I put sort of hope and courage and strength and love because I know you need that to get through the IVF journey and a lot more besides.
Mhm.
But yeah, mostly love. I also have a real I don't know if I should say this on a podcast, but I have a real true crime obsession, and I'm quite obsessed with serial killers.
That's a
So
good
this
balance.
is this is the light and dark balance. So often I'm watching or listening to something quite dark while I'm sewing. And so I was talking to someone about it the other day. She's like, "Oh, that's really interesting." I was like, "Well, you can only be love and light
Yeah,
so
for
much of your life. You
yeah,
can't have to."
it's exhausting. You've got to
Yeah,
balance
it's
it out.
exhausting. I'm not a paragon of virtue. I'm not an angel. So, and I studied psychology, and I find all that criminal psychology really fascinating, and heaps of people are
Really
obsessed with true
interesting.
crime. So I don't put those thoughts into it, but sometimes I think I have to kind of put some extra love to counteract what I'm what
Sure.
I'm listening to or
I love
absorbing.
that. We've all got our dirty secrets.
Absolutely. I also watch
So,
some bad reality television, so I
oh yeah,
try not to put that
we're all
energy in
partial
it.
to a bit of that. For anyone wanting to make their own hearts, where should they start?
Um, I think the website is the best place. Like there's free resources, there's the free instruction sheet and template that people can download. If they want a kit, they can get a kit. But if they've got craft supplies sitting around at home, they can just download the template and get started straight away. And people can always email me if they've got a bigger vision for what they want to do with it. But I think start small, either get some community hearts from the website or make a few and then give them away and see how it goes, see how you feel about it. For a lot of people, it pretty quickly becomes very addictive. So then it just kind of gets a momentum of its own, and yeah, which is lovely. And that's again the ripple effect of kindness. It hooks you in.
I love that. And it might, for somebody that doesn't know how to sew, it could be a good start. So I think sort of too big or
Yeah,
grand for me. So it could be a
yep,
good, could start me on my
absolutely.
journey.
Well, I've sewn hearts with children as young as 3,
Oh,
so
okay. So
that
there is
can
no
inspire
excuse.
you, Tracy. Yeah, no.
I was thinking a staple gun could work. Not quite
You
the same.
could. It might not
Yeah.
be as soft and tactile for the recipient, but you could certainly
Yeah,
give it a go.
yeah, it's true. So was there ever a moment where you questioned whether to keep going? And
Oh, so many moments.
so then what anchored you back to your purpose?
Yeah. Look, I think initially the intention was to make 1,000 hearts and stop. So that was the first obvious place where I was like, do I stop or do I keep going? People are asking for more. And, at that point, it was just like, oh, well, I'll keep doing it. I'm enjoying it. The s- biggest decision, I suppose, for me was a couple of years ago. So in January 2024, I quit my really good job as a director at Cancer Council Tasmania, which I loved, to do 1,000 Hearts full time because it had just got too big and
Mm,
my other job was quite big as well and I just couldn't do both. But in the lead up to that, I took about 4 months to really make some decisions, and it was either quit my job or really reduce hours in the other side of my life and do 1,000 Hearts or give 1,000 Hearts away because I was just like, I just can't keep doing
mm,
both. So, and giving it away was a real consideration on the table. Um, and it wasn't something that I just instantly went, no, I have to keep it. It was really, this is my career, this is my life. What do I really want to do with it? And in the end, I really felt that giving it up would be like abandoning a child. I
mm.
really felt that connected to it and to the community. And my children often joke that Thousand Hearts is my third and favourite child, which is definitely not true. But there is that element of, I created this thing, I birthed it into the world, I've nurtured it, and I've grown it to the point where now it's sort of paying its way, quite literally.
So
And so there is that kind of trajectory.
how many hearts do you think you've made?
I've made over 30,000. Yeah, probably that was about a year ago that I figured that out. So it's probably
Wow.
significantly more than that now. But
You got like
the
really
community is
muscly fingers or something?
the only part of me that's muscly. Yeah, you do get a certain fitness. When I started it as my full-time job, my hands were sore all the time.
I
And I went to
bet.
a hand and wrist expert. I was like, have I destroyed myself?
Yes.
But now I can sew for hours on end, and it's, tolerate it pretty well. Yeah, so yeah, it's
Mm.
it's amazing to see how it's grown.
So, what have these hearts taught you about human tenderness?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I think that it can be found even in places where we really least expect it, and that when you open up a space for people to show their tenderness and show their heart, then that is an incredibly touching and powerful way of connecting with another person.
Oh, that just made me feel emotional. That was
It's
beautiful.
beautiful.
So, and how has creating A Thousand Hearts changed who you are today?
I think I'm a lot nicer.
Well, you kind of have to be.
Honest. I'm kinda, yeah, it's my brand. I'm a lot kinder to myself. That's a huge change.
Mm,
And I think I've got my priorities straight, I think. I think before I started it, there was a lot sort of floating around that I knew I valued, and I had my core values, and they haven't changed a lot, but now I feel like I'm really living them. And, with your Inside Out
mm,
podcast name, I feel like that's something for me now. My values that perhaps were more inside before, now they're
mm,
more coming from the inside, and they're leading how I make decisions in my life. They're leading how um, I'm guided in decision making and how I treat others. And again, I'm not perfect. I can be horrible and mean and
mm.
bitter and all the rest of it. But I think in terms of the big decisions, I really come back and think about it much more aligned with my values than I did previously.
It sounds like you're completely aligned with a sense of purpose behind it, which
Yeah.
is where the sweet
Yeah.
spot is,
Yeah.
right? When we're living
We're
aligned for
completely getting there,
yeah,
getting there.
yeah. Okay, we've all got our dark bits.
Aligned-ish.
That's
Evolving, evolving.
I used to have a food blog called Good Most of the Time, and most people that know me know I'm really
Perfect.
healthy, but I love my chocolate too. And,
Yeah,
I love a good glass of wine. So you
that's
can't be
great.
good all the time.
Right, and you
Yin and
can't be
yang,
kind
good and
all of the
bad.
time. It's,
That's right.
you know
Sometimes you want to lose your shit in traffic, and that's
yeah,
okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes you
Just
just
as
need to
long as you don't
really
get out of
watch
the
a
car.
serial killer do his thing. I don't know, it's just we're all a mix of light and dark, and I always think
Totally.
I'd be really boring if I was just kind and nice all the
I
time.
know.
That's not
But like we
human.
said, it's the intention. It's things to help us
Mm,
get back on track.
yeah,
It's
the
coming back
value.
to those healthier habits. It's like we all can have blowouts. We're
Mm,
all going to have off days. We're all going to have days that are going to trigger us or whatever it may
yeah,
be. But it's being able to get yourself back on track by doing something good,
yeah,
not only for yourself, but especially for the people around you and community.
and being
So,
kind to
Sarah,
yourself about those, yeah, lapses.
absolutely. Yeah. So I always like to finish the podcast with some signature questions. So, what season
Goody.
of life are you in right now?
Oh, what season of life? It's definitely a transitional season, both in a very real way because I turned 50 in February and I'm right in that joyful transition towards menopause. So that is,
Sisterhood, I'm with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, oof. Um, hold on for the
Hold
ride.
on. Hold on. Yeah.
Hold on. So it is a very literal transition in that sense. And my youngest child moved out of home this year. So that was transitioning to the empty nest. And,
That's
so there's a lot
tough.
of transition going on. But I
Hmm.
think the other way that I look at that is I'm also transitioning into a a period of my life of more sort of rest and allowing space to be more present. And I want that not to be a season. I want that to be how I live out the rest of my days, really, because I've really learned this year in particular that, we kind of push ourselves so hard and we have all these requirements of ourselves and expectations of ourselves. But one of the things I realized this year was that there is a choice around that. We kind of go, oh, I'm so busy, as if it's not a choice. And it is a choice, and we can make
Mm,
different choices. And also, the people who love us and the people that we're doing all this busyness for, they want us to be okay
mm.
and they want us to be present for their lives. And when we're pushing so hard and frantically busy, we are not present to the people that we love, even if we think we are. And so for me, it's this transitional season into shifting towards more space for presence and for rest and, yeah, looking after myself and others in that way.
You just answered that so beautifully. And I think as
Thank you.
moms, we definitely have that drive just to keep doing,
Yeah.
and we don't allow ourselves just to sit in the silence, and the
Mm.
silence is what our soul needs the most. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, especially this stage of our life. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And I've
yeah.
started actually when I'm doing production, which is like stacking and packing hearts and quite repetitive. That's when I've often listened to an audiobook or a podcast or something. And
Mm,
I've started lately doing it in silence,
mm.
sometimes for hours on end. And it's so wonderful. I'm just like, oh, I can't believe that the time just goes by quite quickly, but it's
You were
just gives your
really
brain
in
a
the
rest.
moment. Yes, and you're in flow, you're in the moment, fully
Yeah, and you're
present.
present to what
Yeah.
you're doing. And yeah, so it's quite a different way of being
Mm.
in life.
So you already answered the question, what does living from the inside out mean to you? You before we got into these, you answered that. If you could give one message to every woman about self-reconnection and self-care, what would it be?
I think it's that old thing, be kind to yourself, but I think I would go beyond that and say learn what being kind to yourself actually means. It's not about going for a massage and having a wine at the end of the day. Like,
Mm,
it's about how you speak to yourself, but also how you nurture yourself and how you provide space for rest and recovery and self-forgiveness and acceptance of our mistakes and our lapses, our humanity, those moments where we think, "I'm not that proud of that." Self-kindness partly is about allowing yourself to be imperfect and not going down that path of beating yourself up and pushing so hard. So I think it's like really don't just go, "Oh, yeah, I'm kind to myself because I go to the gym and whatever." Sometimes it
mm,
looks different in different times of our lives and, yeah, learn to really live that self-kindness because it does put you in such a better space to then
mm.
be compassionate to others and be present to others and be a better mum, partner, person, human, whatever you're aiming for. So, yeah, I think it's around that.
It's definitely honoring our bodies and our minds from such a young age, isn't it? Like as women, just going through the the hormonal cycle and the changes that our body has and being a mother and working and giving up this and doing that and always just having to sort of juggle and balance, and
Yeah.
often we are very hard on ourselves, and I love that. That was such a beautiful way to finish. It's about honoring and, nourishing ourselves from the inside out.
Yeah. I love that word honouring too. And I would say honouring and even if. So even if you've made a mistake, even if you've gained weight, even if you didn't reach your exercise goal today, practicing that self-compassion,
Mm.
even if something hasn't gone quite the way you want it to, because I think we are quite transactional with ourselves around self-kindness and approval. So I think it's about that unconditional kindness
Mm.
towards ourselves.
Sarah, I could talk all day with you about kindness, but I wanted to thank you for the heart, the intention, and the gentleness you bring. It's a reminder that kindness can be something we not only show, but hold on to as well. So, where can people find you to follow your work?
At the website, thousandhearts.com.au, 1,000 with the number 1000. And thank you so much for the conversation. I always love talking about this stuff, especially with someone who really connects with it and understands. So thank you so much.
Thank you.